Hi, I'm Fazia Costi. I'm the owner of 54 Media Group. It is my honor to present to you the Focus on Success Summit 2024. We have an amazing lineup for you, and we hope that you enjoy each and every one of our presentations. Thank you for joining us.
Hey everybody, my name is John Conafay. I am CEO and co-founder of Integrate. We're building program management software for the world's most ambitious machines. My career kicked off in a fairly unconventional way. In high school, I was very into the metal and hardcore scene, so I started a record label, as one does, at the age of 17, that eventually crashed and failed miserably by all fault of my own. Realized I needed a swift kick in the ass to get some discipline, to go to school and figure out what I was doing. So I went into the Air Force, Communication Navigation Mission Systems on AWACS, which was a hell of a job up in Alaska, which helped me fall in love with the Pacific Northwest and is largely responsible for why I'm in Seattle today, though I've moved about 6 or 7 times between then and now. After the Air Force, I went to Arizona State University studying econ and design, and found an organization called Students for the Exploration and Development of Space, or SEDS. They had a chapter at ASU. Went to the first meeting, and this very charismatic former Marine, Ben Stinnett, turned off all the lights in the room. There were like 30 people there, and started playing Neil deGrasse Tyson's When We Were Dreaming, or We Stopped Dreaming, and I still get goosebumps thinking about that, because now I know that from that moment on, I was just sold. The space industry was for me. So I went to get every job I possibly could in every lab or space-associated organization within Arizona State University while I was treasurer of SEDS ASU. Eventually became the president of SEDS ASU. Ran the national conference called Space Vision. It was very much the ask for forgiveness, not permission sort of thing, because I called our advisor and was like, hey, just signed us up to have 450 international and national students come to ASU, along with a host of a number of speakers. We need a lot of resources. Hope that's okay. He called a month later and was like, what's happening? But we're pretty much too far in to do anything about it at that point. So we hosted Space Vision 2013. Then became executive director of the national organization, and that's really where I got to stretch my legs a bit, and we ripped the entire 31-year-old organization up from its roots. My buddy Hannah Kerner and I, and Jack and a few other people, rebranded the entire organization, quintupled the size, garnered donations from Jeff Bezos and Peter Diamandis and a number of other people for the endowment, and that's really how I got my foot in the space industry. The first billion-dollar company. I've since worked for $3 billion startups in the space industry that are not named SpaceX, so a lot of people haven't heard of them, but they're doing really incredible stuff. The first one I interned for because of SEDS was called Spire Global, now public, multinational corporation. At the time, there were only about 20 to 40 people, and I think I showed up that summer, and they were like, "Oh, you're here." It was funny. It was an amazing internship. I learned an incredible amount, and stayed part of that family for the past decade or so. Before I finished school, I was recruited by Torrey Group to contract at NASA Office of Chief Financial Officer as an analyst, which was incredible, except for the fact that I had to finish 18 credits that semester, and was told you graduate or you don't keep your job, which was perfectly reasonable. That contract ended, and I got brought back to work at Bryce Tech, which is, I was hired by Carissa Christensen for this contracting opportunity. She actually spun out her own company from Toray and Bryce Tech, and I was the benefactor of masterclass in commercial and federal business development from her, and then my good friend Larry Helm for a while I was there, and wouldn't give that experience up to the world. Right after that, they used to call me Startup John there because they knew how much I wanted to work at startups. I was working at a startup, but something Silicon Valley. So I got the offer to work at Astranis. They said they raised 20 million bucks. I was super passionate about closing the digital divide and all the benefits that can reap. Astranis is building micro geo telecommunication satellites out in San Francisco. So I leapt at the opportunity, slept out of the apartment that they built their first satellite out of for the first 3 months while finding a place in San Francisco. Did everything from supply chain, procurement, lab management, commercial business development, federal business development. Federal business development was a little bit verboten at that time. So didn't have the opportunity to talk a lot internally about it, but had the opportunity to get in front of the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and present a plan for how Astranis could be really beneficial, which was one of the most exciting things, opportunities in my entire career. Then I actually went to work for one of our vendors, Spaceflight, which after 2 years at Astranis, I think we're about 120, 150 people when I left, under 10 employees when I joined. Went to Spaceflight, which aggregated a whole bunch of small satellites onto large rockets like the SpaceX Falcon 9. So a rideshare broker of satellites, which was pretty cool. I got to see a lot of the industry and work for this really spectacular person, Melissa Worrell, taught me a lot about, again, commercial and federal business development. And then went to work for one of their vendors, ABL Space Systems, was building small, medium-class launch vehicles. I was head of business development over there, sold to Amazon Kuiper, got us on some government contracts. And I think we're still the only small launcher that Amazon has purchased launch vehicles from. So I will take that as a small feather in my cap. Realized throughout all this that we were using tools that were built for software. So software tools that were built for software, and I saw the same story. You just had to glom on new software for software tools to build these insanely complex machines. And there was so much inherent collaboration between vendors and customers, and that I was kind of at the nexus of, that there was no real good solution. So left to ABL with my boss Dan's blessing to start Integrate. But that is not why we're here. I am here to speak about the insanely batshit crazy constrained world of the space industry and the lessons that it has taught me that serve me to this day. The first lesson is kind of a 4-year lesson, or took me 4 years to really understand where it gotten us from. But I'm going to use the example of Astranis. Astranis is taking generally before this new space boom with SpaceX lowering the price of access to space and CubeSats and small satellites coming about because of the miniaturization of compute technology for cell phones and various other consumer electronics. Timelines for the space industry took like 10 years, and the space industry is just massively constrained in a lot of ways. You have radiation effects that you can only really mimic in nuclear facilities. You have the fact that once you send something up, you will never be able to get it back. You have these wildly complex machines that you build for anywhere from 2 to 10 years that you then put on top of another wildly complex machines, rockets. It's rocket science is the idiom that usually people use to describe something as massively complex. And you have to hope that both of them work, because the options are explosion before the satellite gets to orbit of the rocket. So there's a pretty big failure mechanism. Failure of once the satellite is deployed from the rocket, failure of the satellite on orbit, or the satellite doesn't do exactly what you want it to do, and you're not getting it back unless you're, inhaling particles from it disintegrating in the atmosphere on reentry, hopefully at a planned time. So all this is to say that Astronis was building something really spectacular, where they were taking these massive school bus sized satellites and building a coffee table or wine cooler, as is the example Forbes used. These coffee table sized satellites that can do what these big satellites do, except in a tenth of the time, and something really, really critical and innovative that you hear a lot about now, but you didn't hear a lot about before Astronis was talking about it, was software defined. So there was this really creative, really innovative solution that Astronis came about. And software defined radios have existed, but putting them on orbit, generally, when you had these 10-year timeline satellites that had a fixed frequency that would service a very specific area, you didn't have any flexibility because it was all hardware that was defining those frequencies that you could service. Astronis was like, no, we should build them software defined so that these satellites that last for 10 to 20 to 30 years can service other use cases. They sent up their first satellite, Arcturus, and unfortunately there was a failure on them. The SATAs couldn't get I do this because the solar panels turning to meet the sun. Those weren't working. So the solar panels couldn't get as much energy as they needed to the payload to transmit to Earth at the power level that they need to. You can imagine it takes a lot of power to transmit from 36,000 kilometers away. So because Astronis had said, we're going to make this software-defined radio, instead of being stuck and not able to service their primary mission, they went out and they found a customer who needed essentially to reserve a spot on orbit. You get designated these parking spots for your satellites in GEO, and if you don't put something there that is transmitting from that parking spot in a certain amount of time, you lose the spot, and they're very expensive and take a very long time to get. So somebody was like, hey, we need to be able to transmit from our parking spot. So Astronis moved their satellite to that parking spot and just transmitted in the frequency and spectrum to reserve for that. So they were able to, through this wildly creative solution, because of this highly constrained environment, they were able to solve a problem that other satellites just are not able to, or would not have been able to solve in time. The first lesson that come out of very, very highly constrained environments like space, the space industry in particular, is creativity. All of the externalities that come when you actually think outside of the box and are able to find a solution that nobody else dared to or was willing to attempt. You get these really, really spectacular externalities that open up a wide array of possibilities. And that's carried with me throughout my entire career, not just the fact that I was big into art and music and all of these things, but the creativity applied through innovation in a highly constrained environment. It's pretty spectacular. Next lesson I've learned is when you're working in wildly constrained and painful, frankly, environments like space and the space industry, everything's so risky and so intense that better not be a bullshitter, frankly. There are a lot of them out there. There are a lot of people that say or tweak and analyze and take 10 years to get every facet of something perfect in a model before the rubber actually hits the road, and they realize they can't build the thing or don't know how to, or any number of things. It's really what differentiates the doers from the sayers. And ABL is a great example of this. ABL Space Systems is the last company I worked for before starting Integrate. And one of my absolute favorite things about them was that they were no bullshit. They did and then said. They weren't out there saying that, this is a $8 trillion market that and raising unbelievable amounts of money off of nothing. They signed a large contract with Lockheed Martin. They signed a large contract with Amazon Kuiper and a number of others, and were doing great government work. And then they announced, and then they raised off of those things while they were actively building their first launcher. And where this really came about was, as most first new launch vehicles do, they had a failure on their first launch. Went up straight as an arrow, absolutely beautiful. Wish it had been there for the first launch, and then came right back down due to a fire in the the engine bay. And a lot of companies out there, some that don't exist anymore, would have said, oh, this was an absolute success. We learned everything we needed to. And it's just onward and upward. Bullshit. It didn't work. Something went wrong that you didn't foresee, or else you would have been able to fix it. And ABL did not spout that. They came out and said, here's what we think is the root cause. We had a failure. We're going to fix it. Onward and upward. No blustering, no chest beating saying, we're the most successful company in the world because we got something off the ground or anything like that. They said, we did this thing, it didn't work. Here's how we plan to fix it and move forward. So no bullshit is a pretty big lesson that I've learned, and the benefit of learning. You can suss it out pretty quickly from people that you work with, that you hire, that you deal with. When shit's not getting done right from the get-go, you're dealing with a sayer instead of a doer, and that's one of my big pet peeves, and something that been able to spot. Another thing, this is more specific to hardware, but I think it applies to everything, is the inherent ability to collaborate and to communicate seamlessly with others. This is very much self-serving because that's what I built an entire organization, company, and software around. Is I had this massive frustration that I had to deal with 500 different vendors and all of our customers, and there were direct flow-throughs from vendors to customers, but I had to go digging through spreadsheets and all these things to be able to speak to all of them. And I didn't just have my mission control or my command center for all these interactions. So I built Integrate. But what it really comes down to is we create so much friction for ourselves in the way that we communicate. And if we were able to remove that friction, or not fall in love with the bullshit parts of our work, the busy work that we think is our work, and get to the doing parts, you get better results. This is one of the reasons that SpaceX is so phenomenally successful, is that they, at every corner, they try to, or every turn, they try to remove parts, they try to remove friction, they try to remove processes and things that don't serve them. Great example is this requirement, people being specifically responsible for requirements, and removing requirements with a vengeance. And so that aspect is really near and dear to my heart. Is collaborating means getting rid of friction. So try to do that every turn. One other one directly related to space it actually is born out of my favorite Stephen King quote that I probably should never say in Flight Company, but here we are. And it's wish in one hand and shit in the other. And what it really boils down to is hope is not a strategy. Get out there, build, work, grind. But grinding doesn't mean grinding yourself into the ground either. That's the fifth lesson that I've learned, and probably most recently, unfortunately, is that grinding doesn't mean just burying yourself in work. Especially as a leader and a manager and all these things, I've learned very much how many different habits that I had that were numbing me to all of the work that I hated doing, or the grinding that wasn't really getting me anywhere. And, could be drinking, could be gambling for people. I did, for me, I stopped drinking when I started the company because I was like, I've just got to be perfectly attuned and as healthy and everything to be able to be there for my team and our customers and anybody depending on me. And once I removed the kind of numbing factors out of the way, it helped me hyper focus on what was actually driving things forward and what wasn't. But I still had all the anxiety, frustration, all the baggage that we carry with us to every aspect and through every aspect of our lives. And somebody sat me down and was like, okay, so you don't have a lot of vices now. What are you doing to get out of your own head, to not be so intense to your team all the time and let your anxiety and your demons kind of show through? And it was like, walking's helped, and they're like, maybe you should double down on that. And so I started working out, and I started working out twice a day. And my team noticed it. Everybody I've interacted with has noticed it, not in physique or anything like this, but it brought me from a 12 in all things and running in every single direction down to to an 8, a much more balanced, capable leader and manager who could lead in the way that I wanted to, which is with kindness and with patience and with thinking the best of people. Because we all have demons, and we all have baggage, and we all have the things that we're grappling with. And we've just got to find great ways, healthy, hopefully, ways to maintain those. And I've only learned that in the past 2 years. I wish I'd learned it earlier, because I think it would have served me at my other jobs, and probably driven all the bosses that I formerly worked with a little less crazy if I had. But that's the fifth and final. Take care of yourself. Apply your mask before helping others, because if you're running half full, then you don't have a lot to give to others. Thank you so much. My name is John Conafay, and I hope this was exciting, helpful, interesting, and something. Cheers.